city hospitals who accept patients without paying what I work for.
Okay.
I work at Queens Hospital, at all the city hospitals, urgently need help.
Absolutely. In fact, we lost 2 hospitals in the last fiscal cycle, right? And Manhattan is losing another one now. St. Vincent's is gone. And every time we do that, think about what happens. Your EMS personnel have to respond to a hospital with the patient, right? You move those hospitals further apart, what does that do to response time back to the hospital? It increases it. Last year we were very worried about the swine flu epidemic might have broke out. Had that broken out, would we have had enough beds at our hospitals? Probably not. But it's about priorities and spending, right? And here's another thing. You know, many people have talked about the immigration issue.
Oh,
all right? And here's your problem here, right? You have a large pool of workers who are paying no taxes, either on the payroll side or on the income tax side. And nothing wrong with sending money home, but think about it, much of the money they send home will never ever positively impact our economic condition. So what do? Well, you know, there are 2 camps. And I'm not going to tell you which camp is right, but there are 2 camps actually seriously talking about it. One camp is saying, hey, maybe we need to find some limited way to give them the right to be here as workers, never giving them a citizenship path, but a right to work so we can tax them. And remember, we also have to hold accountable the businesses that are willing to give them the money off the books. You can't just blame the immigrant worker who's looking for the job. You also have to say to the business that's willing to hire them off the books, shame on you, right? It's a 2-part test. They're working illegally and being employed by someone illegally. So both people have to be accountable, right? And the other thing is public safety. How do we reconcile an open borders policy with what's going on? I mean, downtown Flushing, last year, we captured a group of people who were plotting to blow up the train system in Flushing. People who born here, raised here. Flushing High School had one of the terrorists himself go to high school at Flushing High School.
He was my student.
Okay? That's somebody who came here as a child and still. Why do they want to do that? Because radical Islam, not Islam, radical Islam, and everyone's afraid to say it, radical Islam has a message of hate. You're either on board or your life is inconsequential. And we need to be able to stand up and say that, okay? There's nothing wrong with the Muslim faith in and of itself. What is wrong is that this terrorist mentality of radical Islam is infectious. And they get to the young people and they bring that idea to them, and that's what happens. But it's part of a big problem. The hospitals are not a priority for people. The police have become less of a priority. The firehouses are less of a priority. We're more worried about social welfare programs than we are about essential services. You pay your taxes, you expect the government to provide the services you need. That's not what's happening. The government has become Big Brother, has become your paternalist, and they'll tell you what you can do and when you can do it, and that's what's wrong with government. Andy.
Dan, you brought it up about the whole Muslim and terrorist threat. Where do you stand on the building of the mosque downtown?
Yes, I was just going to say
because
that.
Right now, there hasn't been one politician that has put himself on the line to say anything out against this. I was at the demonstration last week. No one showed up.
Bloomberg loves it.
Well, no, I don't know what the mayor's position is.
Yes, he said.
Let me tell you what I know. I know that there are 2 plans. One is the Masjid Mosque, which has been there for 40 years. Okay, has been in that community for 40 years that wanted to renovate and improve. The second is the 16-story tower that was going to go in the Burlington Coat Factory area. I think the Masjid Mosque should have the right to improve its site. They've been there for 40 years. It's not a new location for them. If they want to improve their mosque facilities, they should be able to do it. This new facility, however, is being built on a pre-designated landmark area. Never in the history of the City Council or the history of Community Board 1 have they voted to set aside a potential historic district site in order to allow someone to build a religious institution.
And they shouldn't start now.
And they shouldn't start now, but here's the thing. That's what they've done. I am not concerned about the Masjid Mosque that's already there. What I'm concerned about is that our city government is saying, first at the community board level, well, I know there's a historical designation pending, but we're going to ignore that. I know there's no financing in place, we're going to ignore that. And I know there are some questionable ties to the organization that's funding it, but we're going to ignore that.
How do we stop that?
Well, first thing we have to do is continue to press for disclosure about the source of funding. Okay? And there is nothing wrong with the Masjid Mosque, which is already there, continuing to be there. It's been there for 40 years, and it, God willing, will be there for another 40 years. However, if you are going to intentionally set aside the rules for one group of people, regardless of what that group of people is, if they wanted to put a cathedral there and disregard the zoning and disregard the historical district, that would be a problem too. But on top of that problem is also the source of funding and the funding itself. They're estimating this project at $100 million.
We all know where those dollars are coming from.
Yeah.
Well,
Big time.
the problem is we don't know. We don't know where they're coming from, and that's a question we. No, but we don't know because they won't tell us where the funding is coming.
Just to follow up, Dan.
Yes,
just to follow up. Now I know that it's pending about the landmark status.
Yes.
That hasn't been
finalized one way or the other.
Correct. Say that they somehow legitimize all the funding to this project. What is our next step?
Well, you have to get your city council people to vote against the project going forward from the landmark lifting designation perspective. I don't know that that's going to happen. You've got Community Board 1 that voted in favor of doing this, setting aside the potential landmarking. The Landmarks Preservation Commission still has to make a decision, so you can lobby the Mayor's office and the Landmarks Preservation Commission office to prevent it from happening. And ultimately, on all land use items, the City of New York, the Council, has a check. You know, we have a final check. But it's a 51-member council, and people would have to vote to say no. And, you know...
Is it a majority then?
You need a majority. But again, that's if the land use question gets called, and the only way it's going to get called is if the council member for that district is willing to say, hey, this is something that the people need to decide, and bring it to the council for a vote. I don't know that that's going to happen, and I don't know that politicians have the political will. It's not, again, see, you know, people try to couch this as a religious issue. Radical Islam is not a religious issue. It is a political issue. And the political issue is they call for the extermination of Israel and they call for the destruction of the United States. And I don't care what position you have religiously. You can be Christian, you can be Muslim, you can be Jewish, you can be atheist, you can be polytheist. That doesn't matter to me. What does matter to me is when you tell me that the state of Israel shouldn't exist and that people there should go home to their original countries, okay, because that's nonsense. The state of Israel is our best friend in the world. The only stable democracy that we have. And the notion that someone could tell them they should go home is patently absurd. Okay? So that's one. And number two is this nation is founded on liberty. And liberty means that we get along to each other. Your rights extend to the tip of my nose. Once you get to the tip of my nose, then I have rights. And that's not what's happening. And so if people in radical Islam can't be trusted, so to speak, to police their own, then we have an obligation politically, not religiously, politically, to make sure that they don't get a foothold.
Can't we, the people, put a referendum on the ballot?
You could, but not this year. Why? Because there's here's the screwy nature of law. This year there is a charter revision on the table, which means you are ineligible to have referendums this year. Any year there's charter revision, it trumps your ability locally to have referendum. So this year there will be a charter revision. The mayor's talking about the changes to the city charter.
Let me stop you 1 second. Instead of putting it on the ballot then, why can't it wait for go through with primaries? Why can't they do it then?
No, in any year in which this is state law.